Hello, darling. I met with Dr. Robert Miles today and talked all about the Gothic and talked about how I was reading. I was reading Gothic novels, but hadn't been reading a lot of criticism because every time I started reading criticism, it started spoiling novels for me. And I realized I should get to work on finishing the Castle of Wolfenbach. The meeting went super great though, and I have this whole huge stack of books far away in my backpack. And I'm really excited because he's agreed to do an independent study with me for next semester. So it's gonna be great. I was so shy though; I could barely talk, and I felt like I had nothing intelligent to say. So I'm gonna read all of these books that he gave me, and then I will have intelligent things to say the next time I see him, hopefully. But it was better when I talked about my undergraduate thesis because he seemed to find that interesting, and I had actually put some thought into it. I'm not going to show you my room or anything yet because I still haven't unpacked and it's terrible. So you can look at my black window because it's nighttime. My wonderful sleep habits haven't stuck around as long as I'd hoped. But during the daytime, you can see all these trees. And then if you look just a little bit that way, you can actually see the ocean with mountains coming out of it. And I think they're the mountains of Seattle, or America, which is pretty cool. I think probably the window is my favorite part of the dorm room, but maybe that will change once I've actually unpacked and decorated it and it's more livable. But I'm here to read you a story. I just also kind of really miss you, so I had to talk first. So I'm going to do my 15 minutes of the Castle of Wolfenbach. I kind of don't totally remember where we left off, except that I went and listened to the recording, and the last words were inexpressible misery. So I'm going to start my timer. Let's see what comes next. Here Mr. Weimar stopped. Matilda, who sat almost breathless and stupefied, fetched a deep sigh. Then I am an outcast, a forsaken orphan, without friends or protectors. Gracious heaven! The offspring of guilt, perhaps. For who but guilty wretches would give up their child to strangers? A friendly burst of tears relieved her beating heart. Take comfort, my dearest Matilda. Permit me to offer you my hand, my heart. I will be your protector through life. I consent that you shall consult the Marquis and Marchioness. You shall make your own terms for Albert, whom I shall value for his high fidelity to you. If I have mentioned you in Paris as my niece, it was to avoid disagreeable questions and keep your secret. The marriage may be private or public as you like, and no one will dare interfere with my wife. Think of everything. I will return tomorrow for your determination. He arose, he kissed her hand, and left her motionless in the chair. I'm remembering where we were now. This is the terrible uncle, who is still a creep. The moment he quitted the room, the Marchioness entered, and, embracing the warm statue, as she called her, I have heard all, my dear Matilda, and am equally astonished with yourself. His tale is plausible, perhaps true. Whoever were your parents, I should suppose them dead, from their not making inquiries during so many years after their child. Some praise is doubtless due to Mr. Weimar for his care of you. His first motives were clearly benevolent ones. Whether he latterly intended you honorable or not cannot be known. He offers to marry you now, in face of your friends. 'Tis possible you might mistake the tenor of the conversation you overheard. At any rate, he seems now ready to act with honor. All this I say for Mr. Weimar. Justice demands I should be impartial. Now, on the other hand, if your heart is repugnant to his offers, if you cannot be reconciled in your own mind to the account he has given you, if the gratitude due to his care of you in early life is effaced from your heart by his subsequent conduct, don't marry a man out of gratitude for raising you. And you cannot overcome the disgust it inspired, never think of accepting his hand, to render both wretched. I have adopted you. I love you as a child, and will protect you. In me you shall find the mother you have lost. Sorry, now I'm just realizing all this interesting stuff about the Gothic, the archetypical Gothic tale being a daughter seeking a missing mother, and how that's interesting. And fear not, therefore, my dearest Matilda, to decide as your heart and judgment shall direct. Do nothing hastily. Take this day and night to reflect, and determine with your whole heart tomorrow. Now I'm thinking of, I'm doing too much thinking about how the Gothic had all of this fairly progressive promotion of the marriage. There was a word for it starting with C, but friendly marriages based on ideas of both people being equal partners to each other, and how that was actually kind of new, and it's part of what made the Gothic novels like scandalous and like improper, unlike like Pamela, which was so awful. Anyway, I shall, with your permission, inform the Marquis of this extraordinary story, and I'm sure his affection for you will coincide with mine. Whilst the Marchioness was speaking, Matilda had time to recover herself from the astonishment she had been thrown into, and still more from the humiliating idea that she was indeed a friendless orphan, and owed unbounded obligations to a man she had for some time past looked on with detestation. When the Marchioness was silent, the unhappy girl took her hand, and, kissing it with a flood of tears, "My dear, my generous benefactress, do you and the Marquis decide for me. I am incapable of judging for myself. I feel what I owe to Mr. Weimar's humanity. I honor him for his benevolence and charity to a poor deserted infant. He is a good master, and beloved, as I have heard, by his tenants. I may have erred. I may have condemned him wrongfully." Despite those pictures with their indecent draperies. Yet my heart, my judgment is not on his side. Condescend, dear madam, to direct me. I will take this day and night to reflect on everything I have heard. Have the goodness to inform me in the morning of your own and the Marquis's opinion, and I hope I shall act so as not to forfeit the friendship you have honoured me with. The Marchioness embraced her with expressions of tenderness, and repaired to the Marquis, to whom she repeated the preceding conversation. He was very much surprised and puzzled. We cannot controvert any of the circumstances he has related, and his behaviour to her, from the moment she was thrown on his protection, deserves the greatest praise. One would scarcely believe a mind capable of such good actions could entertain designs so contrary to the honour and the tenor of his former conduct. His offers now certainly prove his affection, but I own I should be sorry to see such a lovely young creature compelled to be sacrificed to a man older, perhaps, than her father. If there is a mystery in her birth, time yet may bring it to light. However, she must determine for herself, but let it be free from the idea of necessity, for on our protection she may rely. The Count de Beauvais, anxious for Matilda's health, and the result of the expected conference, made the Marchioness an early visit. As he had been informed of the preceding circumstances, they made no scruple to relate every particular that had taken place that morning. The Count was very much shocked. He scarcely knew the nature of the sentiments he entertained for Matilda. 'Tis true, he admired and esteemed her, from the little observations he had found an opportunity of making on her character, but he possessed too much good sense to be violently attached on so slender an acquaintance. Yet he could still less bear the idea that she should marry Mr. Weimar. A man of quality in France, to marry an obscure young woman without even knowing the authors of her being, would, he knew, incur everlasting contempt. Yet, were the Germans less proud? But then Mr. Weimar was an elderly man, accountable to no one, lived in the country, detached from the world, and could do as he pleased. In short, he saw insuperable difficulties attending on an attachment to Matilda from himself, and the certainty of it gave him more pain than in prudence he ought to have indulged. He had forgot himself. His long reverie surprised his friends. The Marquis interrupted it by asking his sentiments on the story he had heard. He said it was impossible for him to form an opinion. The account, with respect to her birth, was uncommon, yet nevertheless it might be true. Such things had happened, and were not impossible. But if Mr. Weimar were just in every particular, although he had a claim upon her gratitude, he could not see he had any to her person, contrary to her inclinations. The Marquis said, "Your sentiments exactly coincide with mine. Therefore, the young lady must determine for herself. For my own part, I have little doubt but her birth is noble. Her position, her person, her figure, the extraordinary natural understanding she possesses, confirms my opinion that so many graces seldom belong to a mean birth or dishonest connections." "There may be some truth in your observation," said the Marchioness, "but we have seen and heard of many instances where noble soul has been enclosed within a vulgar body, and honor, fidelity, integrity, and attachment are seen in 1,000 examples among people of the lowest class, though I grant not uncommon to be met with. But then every one has not had the cultivation nor accomplishments of Matilda." "Ah," cried the Count, "your remarks are undoubtedly very just, but there are so many natural graces in this lady that I think with the Marquis— oh, because this is the Count talking who has a crush on her— they could never spring from a mean or improper connection." "I think so too," replied she, "but be that as it may, she shall always command our friendship and protection." She had scarcely said this before a servant entered with a letter. She looked with surprise at the postmark, and withdrew to the window. She had no sooner opened it and perused two or three lines, than she exclaimed, "Gracious heaven! In England, oh my lord! The Countess is safe in England!" The Countess is safe in England? The Count de Beauvais instantly took leave, nor did they attempt to detain him. Oh, sorry, my parental controls are telling me that it's bedtime, because I've started making it boot me out at 11 p.m., but luckily I'm also the admin. I am my own parent. Okay. Nor did they attempt to detain him, but engaged his return in the evening with his mother and sister, if they were disengaged. He no sooner left the room than she eagerly read the contents of her letter as follows. Sorry, I'm just amused by this idea of him like bursting out of the room to give them privacy to read their letter. But okay, the letter. "My dearest sister will, I know, rejoice when I tell her I have escaped from the worst of evils, perhaps from death, and am safe in the protection of a charming English lady, Mrs. Courtenay, at her villa about 3 miles from London. The uncertainty whether you have left France, or on your journey to England, prevents me from being more explicit. If you have not left France, write under cover to Mrs. Courtenay, Harley Street, Cavendish Square. If this letter is sent after you, hasten to me, dearest sister. Oh, what happiness I promise myself in embracing my dearest friends. I hope Miss Weimar is with you. The uncertainty has given me great concern. Do not delay an hour to satisfy your affectionate sister and friend, Victoria." "Good God! I thank thee," cried the Marchioness. "This is blessed news indeed." Okay, just kidding. So I forgot that it's 10 minutes, not 15 minutes that we're supposed to read for, and that there was a reason for that, and that reason is that YouTube videos can't be longer than 15 minutes, and the 10-minute limit of reading gives you like buffer space for the part where I talk about random shit. So this is where I'm going to stop for this video, and then there will be another video starting in a minute, or linked somehow, which will have the rest of the thing that I am reading. Okay.